Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Hunter from Outtenastrophotography, back with a tutorial video today in a continuation to the Pixinsight workflow series. Today's topic, we are going to be going over reflection nebula processing, and a great target we're going to be using is something that I shot about a month ago in the constellation of Scorpius, and it is of course the all-time favorite Rho of Fukiuki. Reason I chose this target because it has pretty much everything you can think of in a nebula. You have emission nebulae, you have dark nebulae, and of course reflection nebulae as well, and it's a very colorful target. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be going through a step-by-step process of what to do when you're processing your images when it comes to reflection nebula and broadband, because it does get a little bit tricky. So any of the repositories that I will be using today, I will be leaving a link down in the description below. Any Pixinsight scripts that I use will also include that. Some tools are paid tools, to keep that in mind, especially from RC Astro. I will be giving a link directly to where you can find those if you want to include them to your Pixinsight suite. So right out of the stack here, we have roughly about 14 hours of data on this target. And the first thing we're going to do is do an unlink stretch right now, just to kind of see what we are working with. This is a 3x drizzled image because what I used was a 135mm Rokinon camera lens with an APS-C sensor. So I am severely undersampled with my image here, and just from the unleaked stretch you can see it is a fairly low target for me, so it does seem quite bright, but things are going to look a lot better. Now the first thing we're going to be doing is some background extraction. You can either do it through two ways. You can either do it through dynamic background extraction, or DBE, which is a free tool inside of Pixinsight. There's also another free tool which I've been using a lot lately, which requires a little bit more of a download to install, but let me tell you, it has definitely been worth it as of lately, and that is Graxpert. So we're going to be using Graxpert since this is what I've been using as of lately, and as part of the Pixinsight Toolbox Suite repository, which you're going to be able to find that through Scripts, Toolbox, and Graxpert. Now you're going to select your image that you have. Usually have a correction, a subtraction, smoothing factor. You can change it however you like. When I'm seeing a lot more vignetting and some gradients in my image, I like to tone this smoothing factor down to about a 0.45. We're going to go ahead and replace the target view. We'll go ahead and hit that check mark button and let that run. It may take a little longer just depending on the size of your image, but when that completes, we'll be right back. Alright, we did some background extraction and it's already looking much better. I still do have a little bit of some gradient there on the right hand side, but all in all it has done a pretty spectacular job. Now the next thing we are going to be using, which is a paid tool known as Blur Exterminator, and if you've been living under a rock this past year, this is definitely a highly recommended tool because it helps with a lot of stellar sharpening and as well as correcting any imperfections that you may have with your stars. See, like up here in the top right corner, as you can see, stars are not perfectly round in some areas, but with Blur Exterminator, it really takes care of that all together. So we'll go ahead and open up Blur Exterminator, and I just use the default settings. Use the automatic PSF. I sharpen stars at about 0.2, sharpen non-stellar at 0.9, and just simply drag this triangle over and go ahead and install. Alright, now we have completed our Blur Exterminator. The next thing we're going to do is a little bit of some noise reduction. As you can see, it's a pretty noisy image overall because at maximum altitude here, it's about 30 degrees above the horizon. So it is in the muck a little bit, but with a little bit of a noise exterminator, we can do that pretty well. And also, there is two different methods of doing this. You can either have the paid tool, Noise Exterminator from RC Astro, or now with Grexpert, they have a denoise, and it's very comparable too. You can also save a little bit of some money from that. You can find that also in the Pixinsight toolbox. You can go under Scripts, Toolbox, Grexpert denoise, and I have found that a strength of 0.8 is the perfect area to kind of mimic a little bit of Noise Exterminator with a batch size of 4. So this process is going to take a couple of minutes to run, so hang tight, go grab a snack, a drink, because it is going to be a little bit as this runs. Now that the Grexpert denoise has completed, now we get into the real fun stuff when we start to stretch our image, and luckily enough, we'll be able to use already made tools from Bill Blanchard. Has some nice stretching tools, but before we actually get to stretch our image, we need to go ahead and color calibrate. Now if you have it set up correctly for SPCC or spectrophotometric color calibration, you can go ahead and use that. Or if you don't, as long as that your image is plate solved, you'll be able to use color calibration, and it does a pretty good job too. Since I already have the GIF folder all set up and with the filters that I use for this target, we're going to go ahead and use spectrophotometric color calibration. Now we're going to keep everything on average spiral galaxy. The QE curve, just the ideal. Now the filter I use is the Optilong L Quad Enhance, which I have made in here. Optilong L Quad Enhance R for red. Do the same thing for green and for blue. Now I do have a tutorial on how to add these filters to your SPCC, so you can have it for your Pixinsight as well. I'll leave a link to that for that video, so you can go ahead and watch it to help it install for your own self. So let's go ahead and color calibrate our image now. It will run through a couple of cycles here throughout the database, so I make sure it picks out the right stars to assign the correct colors to it. And this process will also take about a minute or two. Alright, now our image has been color calibrated. You can see from the white balance function, we're right along that line where we need to be, even though our image looks kind of weird. So we're going to go ahead and clear out that auto STF. And now we're going to use one of Bill Blanchard's stretching scripts, which is the Link Stretch version 6. I'll provide that down below. And all you're going to do is just drag and drop it over, and we'll go ahead and permanently stretch our image to something that looks pretty decent already from the start. And there we go, we have our stretched image. I'm also going to run a resample to get this down to a smaller resolution, because with the 3x drizzle, this is a huge file to work with, and depending on even the strongest of computers, it does struggle a little bit with the processes. So we're going to go ahead and get this down to where it would normally be for my camera. So we're going to reduce this down about 33%, which is roughly about 1/3. Go ahead and let that run. And there we go. So now we can work with a little bit of some colors. So now we have stretched our image. Still a long way to go to really start brightening up these regions here, but we're gonna take care of the stars first to get them out of the picture so we can start working on a lot of the nebulosity. Now you can do that either two ways. You can do that through the free way of StarNet 2, but I definitely recommend Star Exterminator because it's just so much easier to work with, and it's a lot faster too. Go ahead and do the large overlap, unscreen the stars, and then we'll go ahead and safely remove the stars so we can start working on the nebulosity. Now that the Grexpert denoise has completed, now we get into the real fun stuff when we start to stretch our image, and luckily enough, we'll be able to use already made tools from Bill Blanchard. Has some nice stretching tools, but before we actually get to stretch our image, we need to go ahead and color calibrate. Now, if you have it set up correctly for SPCC or spectrophotometric color calibration, you can go ahead and use that. Or if you don't, long as that your image is plate solved, you'll be able to use color calibration, and it does a pretty good job too. Since I already have the Gaia folder all set up and with the filters that I use for this target, we're going to go ahead and use spectrophotometric color calibration. Now we're going to keep everything on average spiral galaxy. The QE curve, just the ideal. Now the filter I use is the Optilong L Quad Enhance, which I have made in here. Optilong L Quad Enhance R for red. Do the same thing for green and for blue. Now I do have a tutorial on how to add these filters to your SPCC, so you can have it for your Pixinsight as well. I'll leave a link to that for that video, so you can go ahead and watch it to help it install for your own self. So let's go ahead and color calibrate our image now. It will run through a couple of cycles here throughout the database, so I make sure it picks out the right stars to assign the correct colors to it. And this process will also take about a minute or two. Alright, now our image has been color calibrated. You can see from the white balance function, we're right along that line where we need to be, even though our image looks kind of weird. So we're going to go ahead and clear out that auto STF. And now we're going to use one of Bill Blanchard's stretching scripts, which is the Link Stretch version 6. I'll provide that down below. And all you're going to do is just drag and drop it over, and we'll go ahead and permanently stretch our image to something that looks pretty decent already from the start. And there we go, we have our stretched image. I'm also going to run a resample to get this down to a smaller resolution, because with the 3x drizzle, this is a huge file to work with, and depending on even the strongest of computers, it does struggle a little bit with the processes. So we're going to go ahead and get this down to where it would normally be for my camera. So we're going to reduce this down about 33%, which is roughly about 1/3. Go ahead and let that run. And there we go. So now we can work with a little bit of some colors. So now we have stretched our image. Still a long way to go to really start brightening up these regions here, but we're gonna take care of the stars first to get them out of the picture so we can start working on a lot of the nebulosity. Now you can do that either two ways. You can do that through the free way of StarNet 2, but I definitely recommend Star Exterminator because it's just so much easier to work with, and it's a lot faster too. Go ahead and do the large overlap on screen to stars, and then we'll go ahead and safely remove the stars so we can start working on the nebulosity. So there we go, we have our stars removed. We're just going to go ahead and rename this as stars, and we're just going to stick that aside for now. So now we are left with a lot of nebulosity, some dark nebula aspects. We have the emission nebula, which is this orangish color from the bright star Antares. You have hydrogen alpha and these reds. The blues there is your reflection nebula. So we're going to go ahead and kind of add a little bit of some contrast to our image overall. So we're going to go with some curves transformation. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit of some contrast just to have this thing start to pop out a little bit more. But right there looks pretty good. Go ahead and run that. Now the next thing I like to use is something called dark structures, which really brings out a lot of the dark nebulae and really make it pop out from the background, which you can find that through scripts, utilities, and dark structure enhance. Now I just kind of leave it at the default settings, but you can also increase the amount that you want, which I'm going to have it be a little bit more prominent. We're going to put it at 0.5 with one iteration. We'll go ahead and run that. And you're going to see a difference, especially here in the center, of that dark nebulae kind of popping out a little bit more. There you go. As you can see, that is a nice difference here. If I go back and go again, it just enhances it and makes it nice and pretty. So now the next thing we're going to work on still is a little bit of the overall background. I can see a little bit of some green that shouldn't be there. So we're going to go ahead and use a range mask. So we can go ahead and mask off the main nebulae regions so we can work on a little bit of the background. I'm going to go ahead and do a real-time preview. Adjust it to wherever you like. Some fuzziness. We'll get it worked in right there. Add a little bit of some smoothness. And then we're going to go ahead and invert the mask from there so we can work on the background. Let's go ahead and minimize that and stick it off to the side. Go ahead and hide your mask so you know what you're working with. And then we're going to open up the curves transformation yet again. And we're just going to bring down a little bit of the overall curves. Little by little, you want to do this. You don't want to go too extreme, because if not, it starts to make things a little bit wonky. Well, right there should be good. And then what I like to do too is to run a little bit of some SCNR, because I am seeing some green in the background, which you don't really want that. So there we go. That looks much better then. So now let's go ahead and work on the overall coloring of the nebulosity, especially in these reds and these blues. So one of the best and easy tools I like to use for color mask is also from Bill Blanchard that you can get absolutely free through a repository. And you can find that under Scripts, Utilities, Color Mask Mod. So what this does, it brings out an image and a color wheel, which you can go ahead and set a range of colors in the color wheel to what you want to have for your color mask. And you can zoom in here too to these areas, so you can click on the image and it actually shows you right on the color wheel where those colors are located. So I got some oranges there, I got some reds, so we're gonna do a range something like there so we can tackle the reds and the oranges. I like to have my mask blur about 6. Go ahead and hit OK. And let that run, and it will create a mask for you of those areas, like so. Go ahead and bring that over to put that mask on. Reopen the curves transformation, and we start bringing up some saturation. I like to do it in increments so you're not overwhelming it to whatever your liking is. You can also do the individual colors, like if you want to add a little bit more red and take out some greens, so you can kind of make it, you know, as natural as you could do. I think I'm going to go one more time with the saturation, because we have a lot of hydrogen here, and on the other side of Antares. So that looks pretty good right there. Go ahead and close that out. Here's what we're looking at so far. Get rid of the other mask. And now we're going to do the same thing, but with the blues here. So we're going to go ahead and go back to Script, Utilities, Color Mask Mod. Zoom into our blue nebulosity here. See where the closest range is. And it looks like it's in between the blue and the cyan. So we're going to run it roughly about here. That's where the color curves were at. Go ahead and let that run. It'll generate the mask. Go ahead and apply that over. Bring out the curves transformation yet again to do a real-time preview. Once again, just go ahead and work a little bit more with the saturation. You can also enhance it more by adding some blue to it. You can add a little bit of green too to kind of get that mix in. Or if you prefer to have it more blue, you can have it that way. But I always like to add at least a little bit of some green because it makes it just pop a little bit more. And I like to be a little bit more aggressive too when it comes to the blues, because those are always the hardest to really bring out any image. So right there looks pretty darn good. Okay. So we got some nice color involved here. We have a little bit of the wispy dark nebulae and dust in the background. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of some sharpening of the image in general. Go ahead and get rid of this mask here as well. And the easiest thing I like to use for, sharpening is a one-click method. Go over to Scripts, Utilities, and Advanced Sharpening. And I just use the default settings overall to go ahead and sharpen our image. I run about 4 different layers of sharpening in general, and already that is looking very, very nice. Got some color there from the reflection nebula. Near the center we have the emission nebulae. On this side, hydrogen alpha over towards this way. We have a little bit of some reflection nebula as well towards the top left corner, which is also associated with the blue horsehead nebula. So all in all, this is looking pretty darn good. So now let's work on our stars in general after we replace this as starless. So let's go ahead and open up our stars. And the only thing we're really going to do is take out any green that doesn't exist in stars. And the easiest way to do that too, which I've had some questions about why I run SCNR twice, one regularly on the background image and then I invert the image and run it again. Reason being because of the outside hue, there's still some green left over. If you happen to notice, if you do that, run SCNR and then invert the image, you'll still notice green around the outside hue of the stars, so it makes sure you get all of it. But also another method that is just a one and click and it does it right for you. If you go to Scripts, Utilities, and correct magenta stars, it will also do the same exact thing. Boom, and you're done. So now we have our stars image, we have our starless image. Let's go ahead and combine them, which I have a Pixinsight script here that I always like to use, which also rescreens the stars back in after you remove them with Star Exterminator. So you use this Pixinsight script here, which I'll provide down in the description. You go ahead and create a new image. You go ahead and run that. So there we go. That is already looking pretty good. Now I am going to crop it a little bit on this side here because of the weird gradient that I'm seeing. So with just a simple dynamic crop, we're just going to go ahead and frame our image up so it doesn't include that, but still make Rho of Fukiyuki the star of the image. So do something like that. And that looks pretty darn good right there. We can also do some last minute final adjustments if you want to use a little bit of the histogram function. So if you seem like your background is a little bit darker, you can also increase the nebulosity a little bit and the brightness overall. Say something like that looks pretty good. One last final notion to it. But we're also going to do a little bit of some star reduction since this region is very rich with stars. Also have another wonderful tool that is used. I'll provide that down below as well. And it also gives you a nice pop-up window as well, also created by Bill Blanchett and Mike Cranford. But you can also go ahead and, create a starless mask, So you can go ahead and do it right from here. You can use either the process of StarNet 2 or for Star Exterminator. You can also see live views of what the stars will look like when they are reduced. And there's also something else known as small star protection. So if you find an image that it kind of looks weird, that it looks very less starless at all. So like for this example here, you can see that the stars are extremely toned down. If you're not a fan of that, you can run this initialize small star protection. And you see, you have all those little stars are unbothered, which is good, especially since we have Messier 4 here to work with. But you can also increase the iterations of the stars in general. You just have to be careful that you're not clipping them too much, especially with this bright star here, Ventaris. And this looks good right here. So go ahead and hit the check mark. It will run through the course. And then right here, you have your final image of Rho Ufukiyuki. So I hope this tutorial made things much easier for everybody who has a little bit of some hard time with using broadband processing, which some have definitely bigger problems, especially if they're in more like polluted areas. So I hope these tools and tips will help you out to make your reflection nebula shine just like the night skies. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. If you're looking to buy any products, I do have affiliate links down below. It's completely free to you, but it just helps me out personally when you're in the market for buying stuff. I just get a little bit of an incentive. Also, we're getting still very close to 1,000 subscribers to the channel. We're almost close to monetizing the channel, which is some really good news because definitely in this hobby, you know very well, it is a very expensive. So thank you all for another series of the Pixinsight workflow. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.